is Tristan Pottas, the CEO of First Development Resources, after the company announced this morning a strong £1 million raise. Well, Tristan, thank you, as always, for your time. How are things?
Oh, yeah, good. Thanks, Mark. Great to be speaking with you this morning.
Well, it's good to be catching up. Last time, of course, we spoke, you were still in Australia. You're back home now. And before we get into the placing and the plans, I wonder if we can just perhaps go over that recent disappointing, as you say, drilling. Now, there's been a bit of time to perhaps reflect since that RNS. So just given your experience in the mining industry, I wonder if you can perhaps take investors through perhaps the reality of mining exploration, and if this sort of one-hit wonder drill is as simple as sort of hit and miss, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, look, Mark, it's a great question. I think when it comes to mineral exploration, and particularly in greenfield environments, you always have to come back to the fact that it's hard, right? Exploration is really tough, but that's just part of the game, right? And that's why juniors like FDR step up and take on the challenges when they're presented, or the opportunities when they're presented, should I say. Particularly in our case at Wallal, it was a greenfield location, and when you're the first to step into these environments, you know there's going to be a lot of learning that you have to take on along the way. But essentially, I guess the biggest challenge is that you're going to deal with your known knowns. You've got your known unknowns, but it's always the unknown unknowns that will cause the biggest challenges. Yeah. Unfortunately for us, we had our fair share of them. But despite the challenges, and of course the disappointment of not being able to test the target at the eastern anomaly, we did drill a hole to a significant depth. Therefore, our understanding of the geology in that part of the world has increased exponentially. The experience, not just for the company and myself, who was on site for the whole drill campaign, but crucially for the drill contractor as well. So if we were to come back, we know we would approach it in a slightly different way, and therefore give ourselves the best chance of getting to depth. So I guess back to the point of your question, when it comes to hit and misses or one-hit wonder drills, look, I guess the market in some respects saw it as a binary outcome. And as I say, you do hit or you do miss. In our case, which is really frustrating, we didn't hit or miss. We didn't, unfortunately, get a chance to test the target because of reasons outside of our control. So, look, it does remain unfinished business. At Wallal, it's not just about the eastern anomaly. Unfortunately, we know the western anomaly is probably too deep, but there's also the border anomaly to the south. Both the eastern anomaly and the border anomaly remain, really compelling targets. And as we mentioned in the RNS, we're working up the opportunity and I guess assessing whether we want to go back to the eastern anomaly or get those additional approvals to allow us to go to the border anomaly and finally test those magnetic bullseye anomalies at Wallal, because clearly the market wants to see them tested. And from my perspective, it's unfinished business, and I really would like to get back there.
And just finally on this point, would you say it was quite a risky strategy? Would you say you could have perhaps mitigated risk, or is it a case, as you say, is unknown unknowns? You almost didn't know the extent of the risk.
Oh, look, every time you drill a hole, Mark, the challenges are there. You could be drilling next to an existing hole. Geology is never right. Straightforward. I always say when you look at engineering drawings, it's always neat black and white on a page, and geology effectively sits in the grey area between the black and the white. It's never always going to go according to plan. Now, when it comes to early stage exploration, and particularly, I guess like the Walall campaign, someone has to go first. Someone has to take that risk, and it's the junior space that does that. That's what we're here for. We're here to take the risk, make the discoveries, and then pass them up the mining curve essentially. So, look, it's part and parcel of it, Mark. I'm not here to say that we're any different to any other explorer, because we're not. But it's I guess it's the hazards of the job. Is that you take on the risk. Would we have approached it in a slightly different way? No, the market seemed to demand drill campaigns. They want high impact exploration. I think AIM loves, and if you excuse the expression, the sex and violence that comes from a drill such as what we attempted. But again, that's what we're here for, and it's unfinished business that we'd like to go back and complete.
Okay. Well, just moving on to today's RNS then. So you've said in the RNS that the funds will be used to initiate multiple rare earth element exploration initiatives at Selta, the definition of gold target at Selta ahead of anticipated reverse circulation drilling and a diamond drilling campaign, and then going back to Wallal, as you mentioned, for the magnetic bullseye anomaly. So let's just start with the rare earths then. And I wonder if we can get a bit of an understanding of perhaps how prospective Selta is for rare earths, given as well, of course, the recent headlines about China banning the export of rare earths. I mean, is this going to be where you focus most of your efforts now, given that macro environment?
Yeah, look, first of all, I think it's absolutely worth pointing out that the reason why Selta forms part of the FDR portfolio was originally because of the rare earth and uranium potential. Obviously, subsequent to that initial acquisition, we've done several phases of work where we've identified that the potential exists well beyond those two targets, and we've got the gold, we've got the copper, we've got the battery metals. There's a potential for lithium. There's a whole smorgasbord of opportunity, as we say, at Selta. Which is fantastic for a junior company like FDR. You know what we saw it in the last lithium boom. When lithium was hot, companies were kind of abandoning their core strategy and looking to bring in new opportunities to benefit from what was hot in the market, and that's fully understandable. From FDR's perspective, we have a portfolio which includes multiple metals. So when you get a shift in geopolitical, I guess, strategy, for want of a better phrase, it allows us not to pivot, but it allows us to contemplate what we have in the portfolio and whether we can sort of maximize the opportunity because of what's going on globally to bring, as we're doing in this instance, bring forward work which was previously unbudgeted to complete alongside the budgeted work which we already established in an attempt to try to maximize the potential whilst as you say, I guess the market is focused on these metals. And I think it's really important to point to that strategic framework agreement that's been established between the US and Australia. That's a massive signal that proves that the world needs to diversify its supply, it needs to reduce its reliance on China. China currently control over 90% of exports of rare earths. Now, they haven't banned the export, but they've limited it. They're adding additional restrictions, which make the whole process of obtaining processed materials that much more difficult. Now, Australia is establishing itself as a rare earth element hub. There's huge amounts of investment going into developing the downstream processing side of things, whether that be vanadium plants in Queensland or gallium plants in Western Australia. But in order to feed these plants, you have to get on the ground and you have to go out and find the metals which can support the supply chain. And again, it comes down to the juniors again to take on that challenge. Now, FDR, we're lucky, as I've mentioned, because at Selta we have already got two rare earth element targets that on the back of this strategic placing, we'll now be able to bring forward in terms of our exploration plans, put money into the ground, and get after the opportunity at the earliest convenience.
Many people, I think, will remember that lithium gold rush a few years ago. And yes, lots of companies do very well out of that. But of course, a lot of them then, it falls away, doesn't it? You have this kind of lumpy pipeline that comes along. And rare earths, I've been a huge fan of rare earths myself for a long time. And now I said one day that rare earths would be on the tongue of everybody in the world. And that's starting to happen now, as we can see. But from what I know about rare earth deposits, they're actually not very rare. What's rare is really to get them to be economic. So you're looking at deposit size, grade, metallurgy, that's also processing, and that can really make or break a project. So, I mean, where are you at right now with your understanding of the deposit that you have, and what makes you think it's got that economic potential that's worth putting some pounds into?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to pick up on a couple of points there, Mark. I mean, I think you were right to call rare earths as something to look at in the future, or now, as it turns out. Rare earths are found in all aspects of our lives, right? From the mundane, telephones, flat screen TVs, to perhaps the more specialized applications such as F-35 fighter jets, right? But the point is, they're involved. They're incorporated into the extremes, as I just mentioned, but they're also form a key part of this, the renewable energy push. So with the magnets or the batteries in alternative forms of energy or wind farm technology, rare earths are a critical component. And like every metal that's in demand, we need to find the sources of it to take forward. But you're right, they aren't, I guess, unusual, but they are unusual in terms of their economic quantities. Yeah. Now, in terms of the targets that we've got at Selta, I've got to stress right now, we don't have a deposit. We have two exploration targets. Now, these exploration targets are based on the fundamentals of the geology, first and foremost. Okay, so where we're located in the Northern Territory, we're 100 kilometers north of Arafura Rare Earths Nolans Project, and the Nolans Project is significant. It's formed part of this framework agreement between the US and Australia. Once it's in full operations, they believe they'll be able to supply 5% of the world's demand for rare earths. But why that's significant for Selta is because the studies that we've done suggest that the geology which underpins Selta is postulated to be compositionally similar to that Arafura. So we've got these specific granite bodies which are either subcrop or outcrop at Selta. So that's our first basis of understanding. The rocks may be prospective for that type of mineral or metal, sorry. The next thing we have to take into consideration is, like every exploration project, is the historical data. Back in 2016, I recall, there was a company on the ASX who were exploring for nickel. They didn't find nickel, but they did find some significantly elevated rare earth elements at Selta. And we have that data set, which forms part of our database. Now, historical data is fantastic because what it does, it provides the arrow of saying, look here, when you combine it with the geology and everything else. But historical data is historical data. The first thing we want to do is get a team on the ground, led by myself, at the earliest convenience this year, to go and resample, to validate and verify that historical data. If we can replicate the results, which were, I'll say, they were significant. They were elevated levels of total rare earth elements, but do it on an increased density. So therefore, we're building a bigger data set, and the sampling methods that we'll be deploying, it's first pass exploration, Mark. So it's about going out and doing that systematic, methodical work, building up the layers of understanding to allow us to then hone in on areas which we believe are most prospective, with the ultimate aim of establishing drill ready targets. But like I've mentioned, we are early stage. There's a lot of smoke at Selta, and now it's a question of really building out the opportunity.
Right.
Strategic fundraise, Mark, has allowed us to bring work which was previously unbudgeted, it was in the future, bring it forward to maximise the opportunity that this shift has in geopolitical policy has presented, and take these targets forward in parallel, in conjunction with the work which was already established last week in the plans for Selta in the announcement that we gave.
Okay, excellent. Well, that makes sense. So you've got that deposit of Arafura nearby, which is the smoke, perhaps, let's say. So you're going to look to get some targets. Okay, I'll come on to what's going to happen in a moment across all the projects. But I just want to go back to the gold potential at Selta, because, of course, gold is also grabbing headlines every day. And you've said you'll be looking to develop dual targets here as well for the gold previously defined at the Lander West target using RC drilling. So just quickly on the gold side at Selta, and what are you looking to? What are we looking at here? Do you think on the gold prospectivity side as well as the rare earths?
Yeah, look, as we mentioned in the announcement last week, our focus until this shift in the policy to rare earths came about was to focus on the gold, and that still remains in parallel with the rare earths our focus. Selta is a really interesting part of the world because, unlike at Wallal, where you've got these deep buried targets, at Selta, the geology is pretty much all at surface or subcropping. The cover across the basement rocks, which potentially host all these different metals, is relatively shallow. We're talking, 60 meters on average at its deepest. So the gold opportunity near surface is really interesting for us. Like with the rare earths, there are historical data sets across Selta for companies who've been exploring for different minerals, and we know there are hits of gold, whether that be in air core drills or in vacuum drills. But it was a secondary exercise for these companies. But we know that the gold exists. But I guess the best indicator currently is our neighbours immediately to the south, iTech Minerals. They're an ASX-listed company. They've just got permissions to start drilling their gold targets, which are associated with this Stafford gold trend, which runs up through their ground and then we believe extends onto Selta ground where we are. These gold targets, or this structure, is one that we'd like to first of all get a better understanding of, Mark, and it comes back to doing that systematic, methodical work. So what we said last week was we want to fly an airborne magnetic survey to do that geophysical analysis from the air to basically track the structures onto Selta. It's work that we can do pretty quickly. We're well advanced. We said we're going to do it this quarter, and that's still the intention. Once we've got that geophysical work that's completed and the structures have been identified, we then need to do a second round of ground-based geophysics to basically hone in on those structures in an attempt to try to really firm up those drill targets. Because as we know, when it comes to deploying the drill rig, you want to give yourself the best chance. You want to make sure that you've done the work to put the rig in the right place, and you get it, and you've got the best understanding as you can in terms of what you're going to expect from surface down to those targets. So by doing this work now, we want to try and build that level of understanding in parallel with the rare earth element work, but specifically for the gold, get to a point where when the weather conditions allow after the cyclone season, get an RC rig on there to complete a multi-hole drill campaign to test the targets, but it's about doing that systematic, methodical work. And it's not the sex and violence that we discussed like at Wallal, but if you drill in the wrong place, it's a very costly exercise for the company. So you've got to have confidence when you do it.
Okay. And just quickly back at Wallal, you say you're looking at options here. So what could potentially any new programs look like? Would you look to try and hit that bullseye again?
Look, as I say, it's unfinished business. Now, whether it's going back to the Eastern anomaly or getting those approvals in place to allow us to go to the border anomaly, we would like to go back. The target remains untested. We didn't hit, but we didn't miss. We didn't get down to that target. But what the work did tell us was that the analysis of the core that we've done that we recovered, there was no evidence of magnetic material in that core, so which suggests to us that any magnetism is constrained to the basement. So we want to get down to that basement. Now, whether we go to the Eastern anomaly or to the border anomaly, that's something that we're working through currently. We are working through those additional permissions for the border anomaly, but essentially it's about putting money into the ground where the market wants to see results. They obviously wanted to see us go to Wallal. We want to go back to Wallal, and for me personally, having sacrificed I don't want to say sacrifice my time because it's part of the job, but having been on site for 6 weeks, having been through the process of getting the company listed, Wallal remains a compelling target, and I really want to go back there.
Okay, good. Well, just finally then, Tristan, the sense I'm getting is it's all about exploration targets. It's about identifying exploration targets so that when drilling season opens up again, when the heat is less in Australia, you can actually go and hit the ground. You say you're going to go yourself, going to get the team on the ground pretty soon. You're going to go yourself. And in the RNS, you said you're looking forward to a busy end of this year before an extremely active start to 2026 on the ground. So let's just say we take today as, let's say, point A. And let's say point B, again, is maybe either active on the ground or actually drilling on the ground. What does it look like? What work will you be doing to get to your point B? Is it costed for? And what sort of timelines are we looking at? So really, I'm looking to get a sense of what's happening in the next X amount of time to get you from where you are today to where you want to be for the next sort of big push.
Yep. Well, we don't stop, Mark. That's the key message. As I say, we want to benefit or capitalize on the opportunity that the rare earths have presented, hence the reason why this strategic placing came about. Those funds, which are separate to the IPO funds, will be deployed as soon as practicable to get a team, including myself, as I say, on the ground this side of Christmas. And that's doing that first pass stream sediment, soil sampling, rock chip sampling and mapping, which, as I say, is pretty, people may say that's mundane exploration. It's very important that we get the basis level of understanding to develop these projects or these targets up the value curve to hopefully to a point at which we can get to a drill ready status. So, sorry, I'm rambling, but essentially we want to do that stream sediment sampling to validate that historical data this side of Christmas. At the same time, we announced last week in the budgeted strategy from the IPO is get that airborne geophysical survey underway as soon as possible, again, this side of Christmas, to develop the potential for gold targets and that structure which we believe comes onto the Selta ground from the ground to the south. In the new year, we would hope to get those results back from the initial rare earth element sampling campaign, whilst at the same time taking that geophysical survey done from the air and honing in with this ground-based GAIP survey to really refine those targets. So to get to a point where at Selta, once it's not so much the heat, it's more to do with the wet season has passed, we can get a rig on site at the earliest possibility to test those gold targets, work up those rare earth element targets, whilst at the same time obtain those necessary approvals to either go to the border anomaly or use the existing approvals to go back to the eastern anomaly at Wallal. So effectively, Mark, what it is, it's a three-pronged exploration attack, so to speak. We're not slowing down. In fact, we're ramping up. We've got a huge amount of work that's lined up in the hope that we can build from this base. Of course, we're disappointed on the outcome of the initial drill at Wallal, but you don't let it defeat you. We know the risks when we come into this. We know the challenges that come with junior exploration, but it's a question of picking yourself up, dusting yourself down, and getting on with the job. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Tristan Pottas, the CEO of First Development Resources. I look forward to chatting as you sort of gear up to getting back out on site.
Thanks, Mark. Great to chat as always.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.